Wow, I actually cannot believe it has already been a full year. What has already proven to be a truly amazing 12 months for horror cinema, from dizzying heights from newcomers and absolute bottom of the barrel garbage from stalwarts. It's great to see a franchise that's over a decade old still pulling strong even in its sixth entry. Before we get into reviewing VHS 85 and ranking and reviewing every single segment, I want to make a minor change to the rules for this year. I want to include the framing narrative and even merge two segments this year, mainly because I think it's quite befitting. Anyone who's seen the movie knows exactly what I'm already talking about. Plus it makes the list a lot easier, but if you know how I'd rate and rank them separately, well, I guess you're just gonna have to wait to the end, or maybe until the next video. But let's get to it. Here's VHS 85 reviewed and ranked. Now, some spoilers are ahead, but frankly, if you haven't watched this movie yet, that's totally okay. It's literally been out for less than a week. Definitely grab a free trial of Shudder and go watch it. If you're a horror fan, you are absolutely missing out if you don't already have Shudder. They're not even sponsoring this video. I just have AMC Plus, and frankly, I really like this streaming service. It's one of the very few independent streaming services, along with Dropout, that I'd happily go to bat for any day of the week. Now, let's get into VHS 85, ranked and reviewed. Starting at number 5, Technogod by Natasha Kermani. Look, I love technology. I love VR. I love when people make fun of performance art. I want to add a huge caveat on this. I'm well aware that Natasha Kermani has been directing for over a decade now, and I frankly have to commend her on the aesthetics here and what she was going for with Technogod. I feel like I understand it, but I have to say, I didn't love Technogod, and I don't even know if I'm even pronouncing the title of this segment properly. This is a fairly simple setup. It's a performance art piece, possibly the last of its kind. There is a woman on stage, Ada, and she is giving a fantastic monologue about the trappings of technology. Ada is wonderfully played by Siobhan Michelle, giving a friggin' amazing performance. The attention to detail with this piece from top to bottom is astounding. Little things like the introduction of the 2-camera setup and the security camera, I really love that. The addition of last performance on the tapes at the start of the segment is so good. I really love the look and feel of everything around the aesthetics for the videotape footage and the VR footage. The fact that it's so of its time, like it's not really 1985, it's more 1989, 1992, but still, I think it's very self-aware, but self-conscious at the same time. Like, it's almost trying to be prophetic in this kind of like anachronistic way. I also really love that Kermani has put in a lot of time and effort to really give you the feeling of how a lot of indie and black box plays look. I went to a lot of them in my 20s. I myself wrote theater as a part of my screenwriting degree when I was younger, and I've seen a lot of one-man or one-woman shows with this exact aesthetic and feel. The fact that there's just like 8 people in the audience is so great. I really just love that as just like a little addition to this piece. I think the thing that lets me down is from the first few minutes of Technogod, I feel like I knew where it was going. The monologuing is also, I get that like as a satire or even just as a representation of this type of theater, I feel like it wasn't over the top enough for let me to actually enjoy the show and kind of be on board with what Kermani was kind of saying about technology and this kind of theater. I will give full props to the gore and effects team. That ending is friggin' amazing and the animation is so on point, but overall the middle is sagging and the warmth and weirdness of Rick Dodge as the inventor just can't keep this whole thing afloat. I give Technogod a paltry 5 out of 10. I would not come back for another performance, but maybe I just won't have to. Number 4, God of Death by Gigi Sol Guerrero. I absolutely loved the aesthetics and the setup for God of Death. I just, the simple story of a small TV crew hosting and producing a morning news show, and this anchor, the actress who played Lucia de Leon, is amazing. I just feel as though, I'll get into why I didn't love this segment, but I really loved everything that set this up. When the worst happens, an 8.0 magnitude earthquake absolutely rocks Mexico City till its foundations shake. I really loved how realistic everything felt. For found footage, realism isn't everything, but when it comes to aesthetics like this of its time and of its nature, I did not find anything out of the ordinary here. I feel as though Guerrero put a lot of time and effort to frame this short around a tragedy that she wasn't even born to experience. It feels like so much research and effort has been put into this. It actually kind of felt kind of similar to Storm Drain from VHS 94, but it had its own aesthetic and flair, and just the way the banter feels so natural with these actors. I want to give a shout out to whoever was playing Lucia and Louis, and especially all of the emergency team actors, especially Carla. I felt like it was so great in nailing down the tone, the look, the feel of everything. The problem I genuinely had was I was very fine to watch this whole thing become a story about an emergency crew who doesn't make its way out. Again, like we mentioned at the top, there are some spoilers here. I felt this was fine without the Aztec sacrifice ritual thing at the end. And I'm not against it at all. I think it actually improves it, and the fact that it came out of nowhere makes it even better. It boosted it a lot higher on the list than I thought possible. The problem I had was I just felt that outside of some of the glitches, there was not enough foreshadowing or initial information given to kind of make this work. Like I said, I will reiterate, the performances from everybody, especially Gabriela Royale and Ari Galagos, I'm so sorry I've butchered those names. Incredible performances, and also the costume work, the effects, the Foley work, so much of this works just down to the sound. And I really, really love that I could feel that this was an earthquake, that I feel that this was happening. I feel like there's a little bit of awkwardness when basing your horror short on a real tragedy, but there's a lot of great acting here, there's a lot of great writing. It doesn't feel unrealistic, it is fantastic and unsettling. It has a killer opening and a fantastically gory ending. I really look forward to seeing more from Gigi Sol Guerrero in the future, and I might even check out her Blumhouse flick Bingo Hall, which is on Amazon. So, at the end of the day, I give God of Death a very shaky 6.5 out of 10. Number 3, Total Copy by David Bruckner. Now, you know I love David Bruckner if you've watched my channel before. This was a really fun and great wraparound story. I feel as though we're coming to a crossroads point where the people who were originally influenced by VHS are making their own content, and the people who make the VHS movies are imitating or at least homaging that content. I never really count the wraparound stories, but this one had such a great beginning, middle, and such a brilliant, gory end to keep me intrigued all the way through. I really couldn't wait to see how this was going to play out. The setup is fairly simple, and as I mentioned before, it had some real analog horror vibes. That's what I was kind of going for with around the fact that like a lot of influence here has come from Local 58 and a lot of found footage documentaries and mockumentaries previously. The setup is fairly simple. It is a TV doco about a creature who's found on top of a butte, and there are researchers, and they turn this creature into their own little weird university experiment. They name the creature Rory and decide to feed it nothing but pure 1980s culture, just to see what happens. Anyone who has seen Species or Reanimator or The Fly knows that these egomaniacal scientists are gonna get their comeuppance, but they are also not to be trusted even with the little increments and kindnesses that they show these creatures. The doco is such a great wraparound segment, and it's the first time, probably since the first VHS, where I've actually felt like it was being taped over, like you were missing just enough of the story, so that's why you're seeing these other VHS segments in between. But once you start to see Rory develop from boy to slime monster to eventually Gary, seen here, it turns into something else, both literally and metaphorically. I will say the ending sequence is great, and just, I have to share this moment. It's not even that much of a spoiler, but Miller Tai as Dr. Gary doing this, I don't think I've laughed this hard at a VHS segment in a while, maybe since Gawkers. Even though the ending is a tiny bit predictable, I really love the final moments of this segment, and it finishes the movie on such a macabre and dark, but kind of funny moment that frankly I won't spoil here. It's great. I love it. I love Bruckner. Can't wait to see what he's going to do next. I give Total Copy a 7.5 out of 10. Now, our penultimate entry, No Wake and Ambrosia. Okay, these two I'm pairing together for anybody who's seen VHS 85 knows why I'm doing so. They are two wonderfully dovetailed stories that I don't think we've ever seen in the VHS series before. It's a bit Rashomon, it's a bit out there, but frankly, I wish they had done more of this stuff in the previous entries. It is actually crazy that we had to get to the 6th segment to get to this. First of all, full commendations to Mike P. Nelson for writing and directing, frankly, a brilliant pair of segments here. Nelson has actually been around since the early 2000s, and he got his big break a couple years ago for directing the Wrong Turn reboot. And frankly, if this is the work that he's putting out now, We need to give him more horror flicks. It's weird because No Wake kind of starts out a very similar to Wrong Turn. A group of young adults go out for a nice getaway and then end up being hunted down by psychos, but with a huge, wonderful series of twists that frankly makes me want to see more of Nelson's writing in the future. Now, I know I tease spoilers at the start of this video, but I'm going to implore you right now, before I show any more footage or talk any more about these two segments, drop what you're doing, go get Shudder, go watch this part. And look, they don't know I exist, or again, this isn't a sponsored video, but I cannot implore you enough that these two segments, and the next one I'm going to talk about, are frankly the best parts of this movie. Look, if you don't plan on doing anything else today, it's only 20 minutes. You'll be frankly happy I got you to watch these. Great, now you're back. It was so good, right? It was just so brilliant. I really felt that while No Wake had minor issues in terms of pacing and setup at the start, that once the crew arrive at the lake and get in the water, I genuinely did not know what was going to happen. I was literally saying to my partner that, oh, it's going to be like Creature from the Black Lagoon, or maybe even like Shark Night, for anybody who remembers the movie Shark Night. And then, as the glitches started to happen and things started to get a little bit more eerie, I was like, oh my god, is this a sequel to Thursday the 17th? And then this happens. And once that first shot is fired, I was so caught off guard. I've never been happier that I was wrong in trying to guess what was going to happen here. This may actually genuinely be the best opening segment to VHS since Amateur Night. Now, as for Ambrosia, every single minute of this is brilliant. It's so tight, it's so funny, it feels real. I love this guy. He reminds me so much of me as a fucking young nerd. And I really love how the story just very, very neatly unravels. I just got so excited when I saw these little subtle signs, like the 7 shown on the woman's hand right here, and then in the background here. I was so amped and ready to see what was going to go down. And while I was a little bit worried that it might end up like Terra or a few other segments in the VHS series, I really, really loved how it all played out. I loved both of these segments separately, and honestly, seeing how both of them ended, all I could think about was if this was a full movie and this was told from 2 different sides, the first hour being the campers and the second hour being the killers, I would have been so psyched to watch this. I really love the chemistry of the group at the start. It felt real, it felt goofy, it felt 80s, and I loved the family in Ambrosia. It really felt like they were doing this tradition for decades. This is an insane family, and absolute props to Evie Bear and Anna Sundberg, who have star power written all over them. I really, really hope their agents are fucking great and that good directors are going to seek them out in the future. They are charming, brilliant, and so off the cuff funny and kind that it's great. I just love how they play 2 very, very different characters in just knowing what they want by their looks and their actions. I really, really loved it. While far from perfect, I really loved these 2 segments in tandem. Together, they deserve an 8.5. Now with that all out of the way, the best segment of VHS 85 is, that's right, Dream Kill by Scott Derrickson. Derrickson very quickly in the last 5 years became one of my favorite horror writers and directors. I know he had a bit of a mixed start in the early 2000s, but every single time I see his name as a writer or a director, it honestly gets me hyped. Even more so when C. Robert Cargill is involved. Dream Kill sounds like the perfect, mind-bending, high-concept, low-budget thrill ride that was everywhere in the 1980s. With the likes of Videodrome, The Fly, and They Live, movies that were born from the minds of men who saw the present and wanted us to fear the future. And now the premise of Dream Kill is super simple. A detective begins to review tapes that predict crime scenes that he later investigates. Using his wiles and wits, things begin to unfold and that even the audience can't see what is going to happen next. While I will say that Derrickson almost apes himself in these home movie segments that are obviously very, very similar to Sinister, I have to commend him for taking it to the next level. Starting with that 911 call and this absolutely jaw-dropping fight sequence that rivals most action movies. Hell, the only thing I could really compare this to was the last 2 seasons of Barry. I feel like there is so much that you can learn, not only as a horror writer or a filmmaker. Every single part of this works. The music, the editing, the gore, the camera work, the lighting, it works on every single level to make you so uncomfortable and so unnerved. And yes, while I do think adding music to found footage films kind of feels like a little bit of a cheat code, I still think it works here because of the nature of the sequels, because these are dreams. It made me want to go back and watch them all again, and frankly, cutting this all together makes me want to watch it all over again. While this isn't the best segment of all time in the VHS series, we'll talk about that, sometimes later this year, I feel like that Dream Kill has more of an homage to James Cameron than John Carpenter. A segment that works on so many levels that I really cannot wait to show this more to people in the future. I frankly could have watched Dream Kill for a full 90 minutes, maybe even 2 hours. I also really have to commend Freddy Rodriguez as Detective Wayne. I haven't seen that guy in a film, since Planet Terror, and I think he does a fantastic job. He's just enough of a cliche to make me laugh, but real enough to make me give a shit when this happens at the end. Yes, Dream Kill is the best segment of VHS 85, and honestly, may go down as one of the best segments in the VHS series. It is a proper 9 out of 10. Overall, here's the full rankings here, and if you're wanting to ask what I would give VHS 85, it is overall an 8 out of 10. It is far better than the last entry. I've just recently updated my Letterboxd so you can see it there, and there's a link below if you want to follow me there. Oh, and if I had to split them up, I'd actually give No Wake an 8 out of 10, and I'd give Ambrosia an 8.5 out of 10. I kind of got into the middle there in terms of the actual final number. But where will VHS 85 rank in the pantheon of VHS movies and their segments? Well, you'll just have to like and subscribe, because my next video will be ranking and updating all of the segments from the VHS movies, all 6 of them from top to bottom, every single segment, all 27 segments ranked and reviewed, and it's coming next month. Hope you have a fantastic Halloween. Stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye, everybody.